Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and our continuing series, the Unported playlist, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. And today we have another Lightgun game. If you've been watching my channel whatsoever, you know it is my favorite genre of arcade games. And today we're taking a look at Taito's Haunted Castle, released on the Type X, which is basically just a computer in a box, making it very easy to play this game at home without being at an arcade. Before we get too far involved though, if you do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link down below as well. But I absolutely love Haunted Castle, and I will say, I have never played this in an arcade. I have only ever played it on my PC, which isn't to say that I'm emulating it, because it is just a Windows executable that has a couple of wrappers to allow you to control the game via mouse or Wiimote if you so choose. But it is an absolutely spectacular arcade light gun game, and I love that people are still making them. Basically, the entire premise is you're going through a museum, and each wing in the museum is differently themed, and it is, of course, haunted. But that's the gist of it, and really, how much more story do you need for a light gun game? You point at things, you shoot them, you kill them, and you hope they don't kill you before you run out of quarters. And of course, running this on Windows, quarters aren't really an issue because I have set it to free play. But I love Haunted Museum. It's everything in a light gun game that I want. I love that each level has a completely different theme to it. I love the boss encounters, and I love a lot of the story that's going on here as well. Interestingly, it reminds me a lot of House of the Dead 4 as far as the main characters are concerned and the voice acting, but you'll see here as we turn around, we're just getting rushed with probably 20 enemies at once, and this game gets really intense, and it's always running at a locked 60 frames a second as long as your computer is the minimum spec for what the Type X would have been from Taito. And trust me, if you bought a computer in the last 10 years, you're going to be able to run this game. But you'll see here as we jumped into that minecart, we went to this complete fantasy setting, and that's a lot of what the game is going to keep showing you. Part of it takes place in the museum, and then you go into another world to be able to complete that level, and it is just so much fun. There's so many different things to do. You're shooting stalactites here, or stalagmites. I mentioned in a previous video, I can never remember which one they are, and I'm sure somebody will tell me nicely in the comments below if that was a mite or a type. But you'll see here as we go up, this gigantic sphinx is just going to come in. All the boss battles in this game are spectacular, and they're all completely varied and different. From start to finish, this game is constantly showing you new and different things. And you know, with light gun games, the core mechanic is very simple. Point at something on the screen and shoot it before it shoots you. So sometimes if they're not done well, I feel like they can start feeling repetitive. That is not an issue whatsoever with Haunted Museum. From the beginning to the end, you're constantly doing different things. And you'll see here in the story, we got one orb, and there is 6 on that tablet. So we have 6 areas in the museum to experience before we're able to get to the final boss. But I love that we get mini games in between here. You're going to see that we have to shoot 550 trinkets or souvenirs, and you have a fully automatic weapon, and you just get to unload. And it's nice after you played a 5-minute intense stage with a boss battle, just to be able to open up and do something basic without the threat of taking damage. And honestly, it doesn't matter if you succeed or fail, it's just a score attack. But moving on here into the next part of the museum, I love that the themes are just constantly changing. Now we're in a haunted library, but what happens in here isn't 100% what you would expect it to be, because of course we're going to have haunted books, and they're going to be flying at us. But this level is going to take inspiration from classic fairy tales and other horror books and start giving us enemies that are very creative. And I would say that the developers at Taito did a really good job of thinking outside the box when it came to each individual level, because now we have card soldiers, something from Alice in Wonderland. But as we move on, that's going to shift ever so slightly, and we're going to see a really famous enemy coming around the corner. But I do appreciate that the game slows itself down to give you a little bit of anticipation. The camera jerks left here and gives you a hard up, and then all of a sudden an enemy pops right up to attack you. But right around the corner, suddenly it is our old friend Frankenstein, just tying more of that storybook element into it, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein being a classic horror novel. But as we run up the stairs here, this game just has a high level of intensity, and I really like that. But the core shooting mechanic is great. The aim is perfect. If you're using a mouse and playing on your PC or even a Wiimote, there are no complaints as far as how this game functions. The only thing you may may need to do, I didn't have to, but I read you have, if you do decide to download and play this, is you may need to run this in Windows XP compatibility mode. Some users said that that's what you needed to do. It wasn't true for me, but if you try to play this and it doesn't work, give that a shot. But I love here as you hit that chandelier, we defeat Frankenstein, but you're going to see, again, just like the previous level, we're going to be sucked into an alternate dimension. But I love the soundtrack and the gun sound effects. Everything sounds really good as well. So what I'm going to let you do is listen for about 45 seconds and I'll come back and tell you more why you probably never heard of Mahana Museum, but you 100% should be playing it. But enjoy.
Aren't they a bit overfed?
It's big! This looks bad!
Is it the best soundtrack for an arcade game ever? Of course not, but it is really fitting as far as what Haunted Museum is trying to do. But again, we just had an intense boss battle and we get an intense but completely meaningless minigame. You can't really get hurt on these, you can either succeed or fail. But I love that the first one was just an aiming challenge. Now this is a pulling the trigger challenge. Can you pull the trigger 40 times before that boulder smashes into your face? It isn't the hardest thing in the world, but of course I'm using a mouse. If you were in the arcades using the gun, it would definitely take a lot more energy. But I really appreciate how much Haunted Museum changes each level structure. It does work on a basic formula. You go into that area of the museum, you see what the theme is, and then you soon get sucked into the alternate dimension where things are a lot crazier than they are in the museum. And honestly, that was my first continue right there, and I'm on stage 3, so I would say this game is extremely fair as far as how many credits it wants out of you is concerned. But of course, we've done a lot of different things. I mean, we were just fighting storybook monsters, and now we're fighting gigantic fish. And I do just love how often it changes, because now we're in the area of the museum that has animals in it, and we're fighting anglerfish, we're fighting sharks. It's just a ton of fun. And of course, like every level, you get swept into the alternate reality, and in this one, suddenly water starts filling your periphery and you are magically underwater with a harpoon gun. This game is just ultimately super creative, and that's why I think I really genuinely love this. This reminds me of the Ocean Hunter from Sega on the Model 3. I did an episode on that previous, and if I remember, I will leave a link in the description below. But every level is so unique and so different, you can't get bored with this game, and the developers at Taito were really smart to do that, because it takes about 35 minutes from start to finish to beat it, and it of course is just shooting at your enemies. The gameplay mechanic never changes, but you're always so curious to see what's going to come next visually and thematically that it makes you just want to keep playing the game. And that's the perfect design as far as arcade games is concerned, in my opinion, because if you're not going to change the gameplay, you need to make it so interesting and so curious and so unique level to level that you just want to keep seeing what is going on. And now that we're in a different area of the museum, we're now going to be fighting haunted dolls, toys, ninjas, fortune tellers, and other things. And I just do appreciate that the developers were constantly changing what you saw, because it makes each level feel exciting for your first playthrough. And pretty much every arcade game, the first playthrough is always the best unless you really want to hammer down and get really good at the game and try to do score attacks or speed runs or one credit continues. But the question is, why didn't this game get ported? And it's a really easy one in this instance. The Wii would have been the perfect console to bring this to, because you have the Wiimote, but obviously graphically you can tell this was something that was beyond the Wii. You could have done something like Sega did with House of the Dead 4 and brought it over to the PlayStation 3 with the Move controllers, but honestly I don't think this was the most popular franchise ever, so I'm guessing financially it would have just been a loser. But this game does have a sequel, and I will be showing that on the channel later on, or I would have already shown it. I always change the schedule. But this is a franchise from Taito, and it is a really good one. But you know, if you've been watching my channel, I love arcade light gun games, so of course I'm going to say this is incredible and you 100% should play it. Maybe you don't like light gun games, and if that's the instance, I hope you enjoyed the video. But if you're wondering how you play this game, I can't leave a link below because that would be quite foolish, but if you Google the name of the game and maybe the operating system you're using, I bet it would be pretty easy to find it on your own, and honestly, it'll run on pretty much any modern computer in the last 5 to 10 years, so it is really easy to play. But leave me a question or comment down below. Have you ever seen this game in arcades? Have you played it? Or are you going to play it after the video is over? Short of that, I'll see you guys next Sunday with more Unported, and I'll have videos throughout the week as well. Bye bye.